back to Adventures in Randomia, an animated D&D solo adventure. This is episode 3, in which Freyia and Clarissa spend a night out in the snowy wilds and wake up to an unexpected visitor. I hope you enjoy, and please do drop me a line with any questions, comments, or tips from your own experience. Last time, our two adventurers, Freyia and Clarissa, set out into the snowy wilds to discover what lay behind the attack on Maeldros and to continue his plan to journey to the mysterious ruined castle on the north side of the island. However, it wasn't long before they were ambushed on the path by a female half-elf rogue who they only narrowly defeated. They discovered a letter on her body from Maeldros which showed they had been working together, but after a falling out, the rogue had attacked Maeldros in revenge. They also find a vial of Maeldros' blood and a small silver key, which the letter suggests are both needed to access the ancient artifact in the castle. We catch up with them after their rest for lunch to recover from their battle. Fully recovered now from their earlier encounter, Freyia and Clarissa set off again in the afternoon sunshine and continue to head north. We soon reach the beginning of the next hex, so we roll on the Arctic terrain table to see how the terrain continues, and we get a 16, so it's continuing Arctic. And then we do a quick navigation check. Freyia rolls a 22 for survival, so yes, she's definitely able to continue following that path. As Freyia and Clarissa trudge through the snow, the vast expanse of the wilderness spreads out around them. The pure white snow stretches as far as the eye can see, with the only break in the landscape being some jagged rocks in the distance and the odd patch of scraggly bushes. Then we need to check whether our adventurers encounter anything on the path in this hex. And we roll a D100 and we get 19, so yes they do. Then we roll on the wilderness encounter table and we get a 65, which is a monster encounter at the medium level. As the sun dips lower, long shadows begin to stretch out across the snow, casting a golden glow over the landscape. The air is crisp and cold. The companions can feel the chill seeping into their bones, and they press on, looking for a place to shelter before the night falls. After a couple of miles of further walking, they come across a weird-shaped ice formation standing in the snow not far from the path. "What an unusual shaped piece of ice," says Clarissa. "Yes," says Freyia, and she goes up close to it and peers at it. Then she gets out her hand axe and taps at it a few times. Freyia suddenly feels a jolt of cold energy coursing through her body. The ice begins to crack and shift, revealing a small icy creature with glowing blue eyes and sharp claws. It hisses menacingly, and both Freyia and Clarissa realise this is not a normal piece of ice, but rather an ice elemental, an ice mephit. The creature seems agitated and aggressive, clearly intent on defending itself from the perceived threat. The mephit strikes out in defence at Freyia, with its claws scratching at her breastplate, but does no damage, but she can feel the chill from its icy breath. The mephit, irritated by its failed attack, starts to hover erratically above the snow, its tiny crystalline wings whirring loudly as it prepares for the next strike. So as we enter battle, we roll for initiative. Clarissa rolls an 11, the mephit rolls 2, and Freyia rolls a 1. Clarissa casts her Sacred Flame cantrip, but the mephit swiftly darts to the side, leaving behind a trail of frost in the air. The Sacred Flame descends through the air, but misses the nimble mephit, which cackles in amusement at the failed attempt. The mephit then casts Frost Breath on both of them, and they both fail the dexterity save. The mephit inhales deeply and exhales a blast of icy breath, causing the temperature to drop rapidly around them. The blast hits both Freyia and Clarissa with intense force, causing their limbs to stiffen and their muscles to tense up as they struggle to move, and they are both wounded by the cold. Freyya's frustration and anger mount as she goes into a rage. Her eyes widen with a fierce intensity, and she lets out a primal roar. She swings her great axe with all her might, but the mephit manages to get out of the way at the last second. The axe cleaves through the air with a whooshing sound and embeds itself into the frozen ground. Freyia swears at the mephit in frustration. Clarissa then tries to hit again with the Sacred Flame cantrip, but the mephit anticipates her move and swiftly sidesteps the descending flames, whilst cackling loudly and pointing an icy claw at Clarissa. The ice mephit claws again at Freyia, its sharp icy talons cutting into her, leaving a trail of frost in their wake. Freyia winces as she feels the claws connect, but her rage dulls the pain. Freyia, her frustration mounting, swings her great axe again at the mephit. It darts to the side with ease, and the axe crashes into the ground, sending a shower of ice and snow flying in all directions. "Stand still so I can hit you, you little bugger," she shouts. Clarissa again utters the sacred words of her cantrip, and a radiant flame descends toward the mephit. But again it flits to the side, and the flame passes harmlessly by it. The mephit hisses in amusement, taunting Clarissa with its icy breath. The mephit then lunges again at Freyia with its sharp claws, but they harmlessly scrape against the hardy fur of her coat, leaving a faint trail of frost in their wake. Freyya's eyes blaze with rage. With a mighty roar she charges forward, her weapon glinting in the fading light. "I'll get you this time, you little bastard!" The blade of her axe strikes the mephit, slicing deeply into its icy flesh and sending shards of ice flying in all directions. A spray of blue mist erupts from the wound as the mephit lets out a high-pitched shriek of pain. Clarissa once again summons radiant flames to descend upon the ice mephit. This time the wounded mephit is too slow and it fails to dodge. The flames dance around the ice elemental, causing further damage. At this point the wounded mephit decides it's had enough of this game. It casts Fog Cloud. A large icy white cloud forms around it and spreads out, shrouding all of them in a dense fog. Freyia and Clarissa can see nothing. They hear a combination of cackling and coughing fading into the distance as the wounded mephit escapes. "Ugh, what a nasty little bugger that was," says Freyia. "And we didn't even get the satisfaction of killing it." "No," says Clarissa. "Never seen anything like it before." "Note to self," says Freyia. "Don't try prospecting strange bits of ice around here." "Ah, prospecting," says Clarissa. "That's what you were doing." Freyia and Clarissa are both still wounded, and Clarissa has no healing spells left. So the two of them limp away from the battlefield and look for a safe place to rest. Freyia throws a 20+3 for survival. "Let's follow this track up into the hills," she says. "We'll likely get more shelter up there." So we're going to roll on the Q&A table to ask if they find somewhere safe to rest for the night. I'm going to add a +5 modifier because of Freyya's great survival check. We roll an 8 +5. That means yes, they do find somewhere safe to rest for the night. As the path weaves round the bend, she spots a cave in a rocky outcrop. She peers inside, great axe at the ready, but the cave is empty. Also, with the great survival check, they spot some scraggly trees just outside the cave, and Freyia is able to chop some dead branches with a hatchet to make a fire. Freyia fills a small iron pot with snow and cooks some root veg from her ration pack into a stew, which they eat with some venison jerky. "Wow," says Freyia, "this adventuring lark is more challenging than I thought." "Agreed," says Clarissa. "It would have been helpful to have my Eldros with us. I hope he's okay and recovering from the effects of that attack on him." "Oh yes, I'd forgotten about him," says Freyia. "I'm wondering what we're going to say to him about Lyra," says Clarissa. "Lyra? Oh right, the half-elf," says Freyia. "What do you mean?" "Well, that letter suggests that my Eldros and the half-elf knew each other quite well. And now she's dead." "Oh, right," says Freyia. "Yeah, best he wasn't with us then." "Well, if he'd been with us," says Clarissa, "things might have gone very differently today." "Yeah, I suppose so," says Freyia, as she chews on a piece of rather sinewy jerky. After they finish their food, Clarissa turns in for the night, hoping to get a good number of hours sleep while Freyia keeps watch. About 4 hours later, at around 1 a.m, both Freyia and Clarissa have had enough short rest to regain their hit points. We then want to find out if they get disturbed in the night. So we're going to put a -3 modifier on this because of the really good survival roll earlier. We roll a 15, -3 is 12, so yes, they do get disturbed, but there's a but. Then we need to find out, well, what wakes them. We roll on the disturbances table, and we get a 7, so they get disturbed by a loud noise in the night. So what may have caused this loud noise? My immediate thought is this could be my Eldros, who has followed them. So while Freyia and Clarissa were travelling, I decided to roll a recovery check for my Eldros in the background, of 25% chance of recovery every 6 hours. And he recovered on the first check in the early afternoon, so there's plenty of time for him to have caught them up. So we asked the Q&A oracle, is this my Eldros who disturbs them? And we roll a 16, so yes, it is him. "Aha!" says a loud voice that echoes round the cave. So this is where you are hiding, ladies. The two of them are startled out of their slumber by a familiar accent. Clarissa from her deep rest inside her sleeping bag, and Freyia from her light snooze whilst keeping watch. Freyia instinctively grabs for her great axe and jumps up from her seat, readying herself for battle. Clarissa sits up and rubs her eyes. Steady there, young dwarf. It is me, Maeldros. Sure enough, Maeldros is standing in the mouth of a cave, casting a long shadow behind him from the light of the low-burning fire. What do you think you're doing? Coming in like that and surprising us? Says Freyia. I could have killed you. But, says Clarissa, we left you close to death back at the tavern. Yes, but it seems my attacker used a potion that mimics the effects of death for a few hours only. By lunchtime I was fine. I had a good meal at the tavern and then set off, and so here I am. How did you know where to find us? Says Freyia. Your tracks, ladies. It was very easy to follow your path. So, this is good. We can now all continue to the castle together. Clarissa and Freyia glance at each other, each of them wondering what to say about their encounter with Lyra. And did you find anything out about your attacker? Clarissa tentatively asks. But Freyia can't contain herself. Your friend Lyra tried to kill us on the road. Maeldros stiffens and looks from one to the other of them. My friend? Says Maeldros. Yeah, look, we have your letter to her that we found on her body. Her body? Stammers Maeldros. Yes, says Clarissa. She ambushed us this morning. We had no choice but to fight her, and she died. So let's find out how Maeldros reacts to this news. We roll on the NPC emotions table, and we get a 14, which is envious. Ah, so you were the ones to finally get her. I so wish I'd been there. I've been trying to get rid of her for months. I envy you seeing that evil woman's body slump into the snow. Clarissa squints at him, wondering whether he's being honest about his feelings on the matter. She rolls a 21 on an insight check and doesn't detect any deception in his response. So it does seem that he's genuinely pleased that she is dead. But, says Clarissa curiously, this letter suggests that you and she were close. You call her my dear Lyra. Ah, that letter I wrote a long time ago. This is all water under the bridge. She was an evil bitch and good riddance to her. Clarissa raises her eyebrows, which is difficult to spot on a tabaxi, and glances again at Freyia. Oh, well that's a relief, says Freyia. We thought you might be upset about it. No, this is good. It removes a complication. We can now proceed to the castle without any further concern. Okay, says Freyia. Now, do you mind taking over my watch? Because me and Clarissa need to get our rest after the day we've had. Of course. You ladies sleep while I keep watch. Clarissa hesitates for a moment and looks to be about to say something, but then she falls silent. Before she returns to bed, Clarissa has a stretch and peers outside the cave. She looks up to the dazzling sight of brilliantly twinkling stars filling the sky and a mysterious green glow of the northern lights. Look, Freyia, she says, isn't it beautiful? But Freyia is already in her sleeping bag and snoring lightly. Clarissa returns to her sleeping bag and settles down to sleep. Maeldros pokes the fire a bit with a stick and then sits down to keep watch. And this is where we will leave our adventurers for now on their first night out in the Arctic wilds. Tune in next time to follow Freyia, Clarissa and Maeldros as they venture into the mysterious ruined castle.